Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for joining us. Well, we're going to talk about the role that private water companies play in the safety and reliability of our water. But first, how about this? It was debate night in Pennsylvania, and we are a huge state in the upcoming presidential election. And joining me to do that is Tom Lehman. He's the Capitol reporter with WGAL. We'll be back after these words.
Welcome to the fast-paced and unrehearsed weekly discussion featuring the leaders who help shape your world. Join us as we address the issues that impact you each and every day. This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Welcome back. Well, we have huge topics to talk about on Pennsylvania Newsmakers this week. Sitting across from me now is Tom Lehman. He's the Capitol reporter with WGAL. All right, Tom, let's talk about elections. It was debate night in Pennsylvania, correct?
Yeah, Terry, obviously everybody's been watching the presidential race, especially since we had the change atop the Democratic ticket. And in Philadelphia, we had the debate long awaited between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. As I understand it, I believe their first meeting ever.
Yeah.
You know, it's certainly a historic moment for the two of them to face off on the debate stage. But also, frankly, a lot of people wanted to see what would happen when you put these two candidates together. One of them taking over the ticket over the events of the summer in which President Joe Biden dropped out after a very we'll say many people saw it as a disastrous debate performance against Donald Trump. And then we also got to see the former president in a debate scenario in which, you know, you don't have the main story being the sitting president and him struggling to sort of answer questions and deal with sort of the situation that was happening on the stage. You know, I think a lot of people looked at last night as sort of an interesting barometer of where things kind of stood between these two candidates, especially as we head into the real home stretch here.
Yeah. I thought it was a very Donald Trump was Donald Trump. I mean, you know, he's not going to change his personality. He's not going to change his style, his character. It's just the way he is. And most analysts said she performed pretty well. You know,
I think anecdotally, talking to a lot of people, I think they found that she was, you know, reserved perhaps in some ways, that when you compare her to the former president, who I think, as we all know, I've been covering him for years, he's going to say what's on his mind, and he's going to say things as he continues to go. Sometimes he seems a little rambling. He seems like he's rambling a little bit, but at times he also may seem like, you know, he's saying things that are nonsensical, or a lot of people would say aren't even true. There was also some criticism at times because some people thought that the way that the moderators were, you know, fact-checking them during the debate, or at least challenging some of their positions, you know, he was sort of challenged to talk about claims such as migrants coming to Ohio and eating people's pets, a claim that, you know, has been disputed, if not debunked at this point. And I think a lot of people, you know, seeing that happen on stage, you know, was interesting. It was definitely a contrast to the previous debate in which the former president was up against the sitting president, and the sitting president was really having a hard time articulating himself.
Well, but they also had the debate in one of the critical battleground states, and some people believe that Pennsylvania is the critical battleground state.
Yeah, and I think you know, when you talk about where it was, Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, the cradle of liberty, obviously there's a lot of focus on this being the key battleground state. You look at how many electoral college votes are up for grabs, and I think most political analysts say if you win Pennsylvania, the paths to victory, the paths to 270 electoral votes.
That's a good point.
They're really, there are a lot more paths to get to there if you take Pennsylvania. So I think that there's no surprise that this has been a huge focus for
And Pennsylvania is often mentioned as the battleground state because, as you point out, the large number of electoral votes, 19, I think, and that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I think maybe a little more than that, but even with that said, you know, you're talking about a situation, Terry, where you know, this is also very much a purple state in many ways. You do have the cities and their suburbs really creating a lot of support for Democratic candidates.
But you got rural Pennsylvania, right?
You look at this map, there are a lot of rural counties, a lot of rural communities out there. But, you know, that's going to be the question about this debate. Are we going to see the Democrats in Pennsylvania get carried again by the city of Philadelphia and the city of Pittsburgh?
And we're going to be probably visited as much, if not more, than any other state by the candidates.
Listen, we've already had several visits by the former candidate and the current candidate, as well as the former president. And I think that they're going to continue to visit here. They want people to see that they are in this state. They want to be visible because this state is the key to victory.
Okay, we'll run to a break. When we back, I want to talk about something that you're going to cover, and that's the fall. We are in the fall. It is September. We're going to deal with the fall legislative session in the Capitol.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Welcome back. Tom Lehman, the Capitol reporter with WGAL, is my guest for another segment. We've been talking about debate night in Pennsylvania, the election, and I'll tell you, it is an election season for members of the House and Senate in Pennsylvania, and we also have a fall legislative session, I think, Tom, don't we?
Yeah, I think it's a little more than 10 session days in total for everybody. But the bottom line is...
They want to get out and campaign, right?
Well, that's part of it. You know, they do have these session days, and, you know, we sort of already got a little bit of a preview. I know the governor has talked about wanting to see an increase in funding for mass transit, particularly as we look at, you know, Philadelphia, SEPTA, and Southeast Pennsylvania, and even a little bit of Delaware, where they've had some funding issues. They're seeking, obviously, a fair increase, and a lot of lawmakers have said, like, listen, we got to help support this because this is how so many people get to work and get around our state.
Sure.
At the same time, we've also seen on the Senate Republican side some inclination that they want to get this issue of skill games settled.
What's a skill game?
So they look like slot machines. You probably see them in your taverns or your restaurants that you like to visit, maybe even the grocery store. But the bottom line is they have sort of fallen through what I would call like a regulatory gray area, where they operate in these locations and they're not taxed, at least directly, in the same way that slot machines are, which is a huge issue. This is being taken up in the courts as to whether they're legal or not. But the bottom line is there's been a lot of momentum, at least on the Senate Republican side, sort of trying to say, hey, if we're going to do transit funding, we'd really like to.
But they don't have a lot of time. I mean, would you say 10 days?
Yeah, a little more than that, I believe. But the bottom line is, Terry,
they want to get out and campaign for their own re-elections, right?
Exactly. And, you know, all of the legislative seats are up for grabs. And, you know, one seat
House
swings
seats, right?
Yes, I'm sorry, the House seats. You have 203 seats. Each one matters. If one flips, it potentially changes the power dynamics in the chamber, given that Democrats have a 102 to 101 lead.
Can it get any closer than that?
No, you can't. But with all that said, you know, there's other matters like the constitutional amendments. There are several right now, including the one dealing with changing the rules about when a survivor of child sex abuse can sue their abuser, or in some cases institutions. That's been long sought, and it may not even get to the finish line again, simply because we're running out of time for that to get passed, because it has to pass within 2 consecutive General Assemblies, and we are just about at the point now where they're running out of days to do that.
And I'll tell you, for the legislature, as I've followed it over many decades, 10 days is not a lot of time for the lawmakers. And remember, many of them want to be out on the campaign trail.
Yeah.
That's the other conflict that they have.
Right, and I think, particularly on the state Senate side, I don't know that I don't think people are predicting that chamber will flip, but I think there is certainly going to be potentially some gains by Democrats there. But on the House side, again, all of these seats are up for grabs. And while there are certainly some districts that now favor Democrats after the redistricting,
sure,
you've got a situation where they can't lose any seats, at least from a net standpoint.
Right.
And Republicans, if they want to get back in control of the chamber, they've got to take back some of these other seats. One thing to watch, how is the presidential race going to affect the down ballot races?
Yeah, that's true, with the turnout by party, which is critically important, right?
Absolutely. I mean, listen, you get more people into the ballot box to vote for you, a lot of times that ends up giving you the victory. The mail ballot thing has certainly changed things, but I think ultimately, it's going to come down to turnout.
Yeah. Okay, it's in here. It's water. The quality and safety of our water supply is critically important. We're going to take that subject up after the break.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by
Cross-State Credit Union Association. Credit unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, go to ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, representing the faculty and coaches who are devoted to providing quality public higher education for Pennsylvania's college students.
Well, we use it every day. It's called water. Our water supply is extremely important. The quality of our water in particular. Joining me to talk about that and some details related to that is Justin Ladner. He's the president of Pennsylvania American Water. Welcome to the program.
Good to be here, Terry. Thank you.
Well, it's my pleasure. I'll tell you something. When we decided on this topic, I began to think an awful lot about the quality and safety of our water supply. I don't know, we think about the quality of the water when we go wherever we're going to try to get it to drink out of a machine or a fountain or whatever, but we don't think often about it at home. But go ahead.
You're exactly right, Terry. And you mentioned in your comments about taking it for granted. As president of Pennsylvania American Water, we're the largest water and wastewater provider in the Commonwealth, and we serve nearly 2.3 million Pennsylvanians, roughly 20% of the population.
Wow.
And we can't afford to take it for granted. It's what we do. We pride ourselves over 100 years of making sure that when those 2.3 million Pennsylvanians turn on their tap, the water comes out safe. Because we talk a lot about utilities, energy, gas, all very important, but there's nothing more important than the utility that you inhale and ingest, and that's critical.
Regularly, not just
That's right.
Occasionally.
That's exactly right. And serving a territory as vast as Pennsylvania American Water does across the Commonwealth. I was out in Western PA, the Butler area yesterday, and the challenges, they vary with the different surface water, so the rivers, or whether we're using wells in the Pocono area.
Good point.
But at the end of the day, regardless of those challenges, the end product must be safe for our customers.
There are a couple of topics that you want to talk about. One is Tropical Storm Debbie. What's that about?
Sure. So in addition to the normal challenges, I would say, that we face to make sure that the water is clean, reliable, and safe, things like emerging contaminants, PFAS, lead service lines. We've got climate variability or resiliency, whatever you want to call it. And here in the Harrisburg area, one of our largest service territories is the Mechanicsburg territory that's got over 600 miles of main. And Tropical Storm Debbie came in on a Friday afternoon, 6 inches of rain within 10 hours, created so much flooding that we had a significant issue where we lost critical main.
Yeah.
And we were able to respond within 24 hours and get everybody in that service territory back with water. And, during that time where they were without water, we understand customers' expectations. We deployed 4 bottled water stations with the help of the Pennsylvania National Guard, 30 tractor-trailer loads worth of water. And we're really proud of that. And it's not easy to bring a big system like that, 600 miles of main, back up. But that's an example where we're doing the normal investment for aging infrastructure, but we've also now got to prepare for things like a tropical storm Debbie, 6 inches of rain. And those storms just aren't what we used to experience.
Sure. Let's run to a break, and we come back talk about understanding water market value. We'll do that and more after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania American Water. We keep life flowing across the Keystone State.
My guest is Justin Ladner. He's the president of Pennsylvania American Water. We're talking about a lot of really important topics. Before we get to water market value, let's talk about customer assistance programs. That's obviously vitally important to your customers.
Absolutely, Terry. We talked in the previous segment about infrastructure and investment and resiliency, and we know there's a cost for that. And just in Pennsylvania American Water alone, we're planning to invest $1 billion in infrastructure investment from the beginning of this year through the middle of 25.
Right.
And I'm very cognizant and aware that there's affordability concerns with that. And I'm really excited that we're expanding on our customer assistance program. And it's one of the oldest programs, by the way, in the country for a water utility, over 30 years in existence. But we want to continue to improve upon it. We know inflation is real. We see it at the water company in terms of chemical costs, things like that. But we know that our customers are going to the grocery store and they're seeing rising costs. So we know we need to focus on customer assistance programs.
And the state has intervened and approved takeovers of water companies. Right?
Absolutely. So, we do all this in partnership with the Public Utility Commission. They're our regulator. They oversee us in economic terms as well as, DEP for environmental. And in our last rate case, we said we need to enhance these customer assistance programs with the Public Utility Commission. And just last month, we were able to get that fully approved, and the end result is a significant expansion. And so what am I talking about, customer assistance programs? Because I really want your viewers to get some awareness on this. We've got multiple facets of our customer assistance program. I call it kind of the numerous legs of the stool. The first one is H2O programs, help to others, and that's a company-funded program where our customers, based on income eligibility, can receive up to $500 in grant for water and wastewater on an annual basis.
Right.
And we raised that eligibility up to 250% of the federal poverty income guidelines. Previously, it was 200%, so we're widening that net, so to speak. And just last year, these programs are successful. 3,700 households received Helping to Others grants, tune of $1.3 million.
Well, you're talking about something that's absolutely essential. This isn't optional.
That's exactly right.
Lives.
This is a bill that's got to get paid because you got to be able to turn that water on.
Correct.
And we have another program, and you talk about the regulator, it was very critical in terms of partnering with them, low-income rate designs. So not only just these grants, one-time kind of thing, but an ongoing monthly support system. And that program used to be 3 tiers, is now 4 tiers, up to 200% of federal poverty. So that that federal poverty income guidelines is really the criteria. But now you've got another category. We're talking about 55,000 more customers now eligible, and that's 30 to 90% monthly bill reduction.
Is that related to water market value?
Well, I think water market value is a topic that deals with the assets for the water systems and ultimately does impact the true cost of service, which is how our rates are determined. And in an effort to support our customers, we're creating these customer assistance programs.
Yeah. Let's talk about water utilities and infrastructure investment. It seems to me that if we're going to get supplied water, then it constantly takes a lot of infrastructure investment to make sure that the water is clean, that it's safe, that it has quality to it.
Can't underscore it enough, Terry. You're absolutely right. You know, the age of the water infrastructure in this country is very old, and at Pennsylvania American Water, we have over 11,000 miles of main in this state that we're responsible for. 11,000. It's like 4 trips coast to coast. So trying to replace that proactively is a huge challenge, but that's the task that we've got to do, because we know our customers expect it and our environmental regulators.
But the infrastructure investment has to be considerable to keep up, correct?
It does, and I mentioned $1 billion earlier.
Right.
And you know that continues to increase, and we're very fortunate. We've got economies of scale. We're the largest, in the state. So in terms of buying chemicals, buying pipe, we have a much better position in terms of procuring those materials, so we can replace more than most. And
Pennsylvania is a large, complicated state with all kinds of geography, different geographic entities to it, correct?
You're exactly right. You know, I came from Illinois, and previous role in Illinois is very flat, and I mentioned being out west earlier, between the mountains of Pittsburgh and then, the Northeast, Scranton. You've got to get that water up these mountains and back down, so that requires pressurization, and that's a whole nother component on getting the delivery of the water, and it's another thing that can break.
Yeah.
And not only is it investment financially in materials, it's expertise too, Terry.
Yeah.
And everybody's facing workforce.
That involves considerable investment, obviously.
Absolutely. I mean, it's nonstop, and we've got to get the work done in cold weather, winter weather, and with different supply chain labor challenges, but it must get done, and we deliver it.
And it involves what you referred to as infrastructure investment. It's just not investment for things that are fleeting.
No, it's putting pipe in the ground. It's building water plants. It's creating great jobs for local contractors. In addition to our team members, we have over 1,200 team members. All of this collectively is what's required to, again, make sure that water, when you turn that tap on, is clean and safe.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, what's interesting to me about this is it's not something that we think a lot about, although of late, personally, I've been concerned about where I get my water from, particularly when I'm traveling.
Well, I think it's a good priority for you, because you can't take it for granted, and the challenge to make sure it's clean continues to increase.
Well, look, I want to thank you. I think this has been an extremely important update, and you'll have to come back and make sure you keep us posted on water. All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, stay well.